announce a movie that's going to be at the Castro called Healing Sex by Shawna, Jackie Serano, and Stacey Haynes. And they wanted me to announce it. I have a small part in it, and there are amazing people in it, and it's going to be tomorrow at 11 o'clock at the Castro. So, my piece is called Forbidden. Notes from the love of a trans man and a femdyke. Start with a fragment of a poem. If in the swift darkness I should trip, let every stinging eye ignite. Siobhan writes, I had sex with a man. About sums it up. I've never made out with a guy. I have always been very skittish about men touching me. I have been on one date, and I certainly have never had sex. Sex had been in her car that first time, halting, tentative. Wolf had felt her body new under his fingers, softly changing in the night air. The car containing her hesitancy and curiosity. He was surprised when she pulled it over, parked on the street that late night, turned to him suddenly and declared, I want to climb in your lap. She would let him fuck her, but she wouldn't kiss him. Wolf writes, I'm a transsexual man, 15 years along. I mean, I've been on testosterone that long, and I've had top surgery. No bottom yet. But don't think that means I haven't changed. My cock is small, a large clit, yet also a cock now in a sense. She pulls at it with her small hands and holds it, feeling it grow in her fist. A new sensation with a lover, she tells me, to, quote, hold something in my hand. It excites me that I'm the first. Unfamiliar, she tells me how alien my body feels to her. Making love with me is night and day from what she'd experienced before, she said, even with butches who were beginning transition. Siobhan wouldn't kiss me for 2 full weeks. Stoned together, sweetly pressed against each other beneath the covers, she begins, opening her lips slightly and finally completely. Weeks evaporate as we make love, passionate in her room, with the yellow walls, an open window to the street, groping each other with fear and delight. Months passed. If in the swift darkness I should trip, we keep making love. She said she would leave in a month and a half, in 3 months, and 6 months, but I'm a man, she says, and she is a lesbian. Dating a dyke, a femdyke, has been very strange yet familiar. I dated only straight women for many years, actually. I haven't dated a lesbian now for 20 years. There's an intensifying clarity in her movement of thought. She's small and beautiful, with long dark hair cascading down her back, stripper hair. Balancing on high heels, he walks her to her car. Even many of the straight women he's dated weren't such vamps. She loves being a girl. Wolf is mesmerized and captivated by her delicate yet wanton sexuality, alive in her tiny hands and deep blue eyes. He enjoys moving her around the bed gently or with short force. She's surprised by her erotic response to this. I like that male aggression. I didn't think I would. When he fucks her from behind, his movements are explosive, she says, like a piston. Siobhan has plans. She's on top of him, looking down. From that distance, her face is hypnotic. An expression of concentration and fragile adoration stops him bare and vulnerable. Looking so deeply at him and into him, she tells him to be still, because he is never still. When they make love, he is always in control. But now she gazes down from atop him. Their bodies are parallel. Her hair curls around her face, lion-like. She is indelibly sweet and majestic, exotic in that near distance. Has he ever seen anything so beautiful? Her face alive with passion, her fingers touching his cheek so tender, afraid, stroking his face slow and slow, her hands shake. She had always wanted this thing, to orchestrate. She had felt monstrous with this desire before. He has never been still and allowed someone to simply act upon him. If in the swift darkness I should trip, minister to me like heaven, for I am alive here, I am alive. Open your mouth, she asks gently, and he does. Her tongue then, inside him, his mouth, slow, invasive, complete, her hand still shaking, poised in the air, and gently soft against his jawline, tracing his features as the lamp lights her. He's never been so still before. When he begins to move in the familiar way to take her, she commands in a gentle voice, tender and sure, to keep his hands at his side. A simple and singular gesture, and overwhelming. He's afraid now. As they watch themselves from a distance, floating and tethered at once to their emotions, they are unable to look away. The room is damp with tears and joy, his tears. Your masculinity makes this possible, she writes him. She tells him that she wants to devour him, to consume him, to rip him down the middle and crawl inside. She writes, I am in love. It has begun to sort of hurt when I don't see Wolf. I don't like this, and I want to stop seeing him until the feeling goes away, but I won't, because I also want to see him again as soon as possible. Siobhan dreams that she's walking with Wolf in a field, and they're followed by people making a documentary about trans men. Suddenly, one of them shoves a microphone at her and asks, do you miss having a girlfriend? In the dream, she bursts into tears. In her actual life, he will turn to her and hold her in the dark as she cries, or hold her in the soft sunlight streaming through the green window. She confesses she feels like a traitor, a sellout, when she cries that she's lost her ideal of loving women, which is the highest and greatest of all loves. Who is she? And what in her life can be counted on to be real, solid, indelible? If in the swift darkness I should trip. For Siobhan, Wolf's vulnerability and otherness are sexually compelling. The fact that his genitals are unusual, incomplete as male, still female in some sense, is absolutely moving to her, compelling. He is, quote, other to her, and then often he is still also entirely male, a man with a wound, a strangeness, an alien secret. It is highly arousing to violate a man, she finds. The mixture is volatile. I'm attracted to your wound, Siobhan writes. I'm drawn towards the presence of this pain. Even when it is not evident, I pick up on it and am pulled forward like a shark that detects blood in the water. This revelation startles him and he wonders if it is right. Although he doesn't come unless he fucks her hard, he begins to relate his opening his entire body to her as a sacrifice, a complete surrendering for her, to her, for his love of her. She floats above him, passionate and dewy with lust. You are mine, Siobhan says over and over again. You belong to me. Wolf has always had a fantasy, even when he had been a dyke, of converting a lesbian to sleeping with men, of making her like it, of giving her a good, deep, hard fuck. She had been afraid in the beginning, and sometimes she told him she still was. One time he didn't hold back. She screamed and cried out and shook with lust, then whimpered and moaned as he penetrated her. He took her with strength, a rush through every ounce of his being, his voice, violent roaring. He surprised himself. They looked at each other, startled later. She told him, as she lay in his arms quietly, I've always been afraid of a man taking me like that. Months later, she would talk of her fear of men, her fear of rape, and tell him, you look like the kind of man I'm afraid of. If in the swift darkness I should trip, let every stinging eye ignite. Siobhan feels that her sexual orientation has been thrown into chaos. Twin feelings of attraction and excitement, then repulsion. She told Wolf now that once she was aroused enough, the fact that heterosexuality was so gross was part of what turned her on. Once she was down, once he was dominating her, entirely masculine, picking her up and moving her around so easily, frightening her still sometimes, yet bringing her to hard climax. She didn't want to talk about it. And then she would. She wanted to forget she felt like that. And then she didn't. At night she clung to him and told him deeply that she loved him. She hadn't left him yet. They were in love and moving through a passage. Siobhan would say to him one day, finally over dinner, dressed up, elegant and lit with glamour, eyes wide with some promise, I think I'm sexier now because of you, my relationship to you. Part of the reason that I climbed into your lap that night was because I was sexually afraid of men. I was afraid of that part of my sexuality that has such a powerful effect on them. I was always holding something back. I wanted to get over that. I didn't want any longer to cut off or curtail my power, her power, erotic, nocturnal heat, grace. She pursued with him the abandonment of limits through erotic grace, and my whole face and body are radiating